All right, guys, welcome back to the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, I'm joined by two of the founding members of the Green Beret racing team. Is that correct?
Green Beret Racing. Yes.
Green Beret Racing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Fantastic. We were out at the range recently. Tell me a little bit about kind of like what we were doing out there.
So yesterday, what we did, we took out some friends of yours, Dave Pierce and the guys at Pierce Building, some families and friends, and we did basic pistol fundamentals and marksmanship.
Okay.
Then we evolved a little bit into defensive firing, and we ended the day with shoot some steel and having some fun.
That's awesome. So there's a question here. There's a little bit of I guess distance between racing and then shooting firearms. Can maybe one of you explain like what's happening there?
But we're both spent quite a bit of time in Special Forces, the Army's Green Berets, and shooting is it's a passion of ours. It's not just a lifeblood of how we come back from deployments, but it's also, most of us take it up as a passion outside of the military. So a lot of us take our personal time and we help train friends to make sure that they're safe, because at some point you realize that this tool is not just dangerous, it's fun. So why not blend them? Now, where that goes into racing is really the premise behind Green Beret Racing isn't just let's go fast. It's get guys into something outside of their profession that involves an adrenaline rush. So Green Beret Racing is probably a misnomer, but
Okay.
It's really geared towards how do we do something that involves competition, that seeks to get a guy not to commit suicide, but instead to commit time.
Wow. So you were mentioning statistics at the range yesterday. I think that a lot of people out there know that it is something that exists, especially in the military, right? Is it more prevalent in the Green Berets than other branches, or what's kind of like the relationship there?
It's definitely higher in the special operations side. So everybody's familiar with Army Rangers, with Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and the other units that are associated with SOCOM, the Special Operations Command. We see a higher rate generally because we have a higher deployment tempo, we have a higher job requirement, and we also see a higher casualty rate. Mm-hmm. So when guys are not able to find an outlet for that, either while on a team or outside of the military, suicide tends to be the way that goes. Right now, statistically, the Army sees about a 20 per 100,000 suicide rate.
Okay.
Which is drastically higher than most professions that people even know of. The special operations community has a 39.3 per 100,000, so dang near double. It can be correlated to quite a few things, but it mainly comes down to purpose, because everything in special operations is about the team. Mm-hmm. You sacrifice your family, your body, and your time, and when that's gone, you really have this big empty space. And what do we do with it? That's really the question that we're trying to answer.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Amazing what you're doing with the organization. But take me back to the beginning. So how did the Green Beret Racing start?
So initially, I'm retired. I did 22 years. I retired May 19th. And I got into doing firearms training and executive protection. Just an outlet. If I'm being honest, I didn't want to go to work, really. And this doesn't feel like work for me. So I kind of went into that. So Nick is still active duty. He called me up and asked me if I wanted to race in the Mint 400. Had no idea what it was, but I'm very familiar with ATVs, UTVs, being in Special Forces, we use them a lot. So I'm very, know my way around them pretty good. So we get out there, we fast forward to the Mint 400, and we're racing, and we get assigned a vehicle that was rented and donated to us. And we never even got to touch it really before it was time to race.
Okay. So you're going into this, have you used that type of vehicle before at that point?
But not that one in particular. Never even started it until we started it up to get in it, to drive it to the start line. Okay. that was the situation.
How was that? Kind of like, was it nervousness? I mean, did you feel how did that feel?
As stupid as it may sound, exciting.
Excited.
No, nerves were like, I don't know if it was nerves, but just a little apprehension, like let's not tear up these people's equipment.
Sure.
but being so nervous that you can't operate, no, it was awesome.
Sure. I love it.
Yeah. Then we get up there and we're staging and you're looking around, and like we said before, you don't get overwhelmed, but then you realize the stage that you're on now. It's like, okay, this is not just bebopping around the desert. This is an event. This is a place. We're standing up to sing the Star Spangled Banner, and you look around, it's like, okay, this is for real. But it ended up turning into something so huge and so great that's what kind of pushed us forward to GBR, because for me, feeling that sense of loss that Nick was talking about before. So you go from doing all these high octane events and these things that's required in your job, working around like-minded individuals who want to come to work every day, who want to perform, who want to compete in everything. And then you go from that to, okay, now what do I do with my hands? I'm done, I'm retired. Everything should be great, right? That sense of loss, that gap, what do you do with it? And then we find guys, they dive in headfirst into a bottle. Or they don't have that healthy distraction. They don't have any more competition. For me, it was spending $600 almost a week at the range, trying to scratch an itch, for whatever reason. And trying to figure out who am I now, because part of me feels like there's nothing I'm ever going to do in my life that's going to be as great as what I just got finished doing, which is not true in any means, but that's how you feel. So when we got out there, that was the first time that void was being filled through GBR. And then talking to Nick, we just sat there and was like, we got to figure out a way to get this out to the fellas. There has to be a way to cultivate this into some type of atmosphere or culture to get guys that, hey, there are other things. There are healthy distractions. There are ways to be competitive. And that's basically the base of it, Just trying to figure out how to, for me right now, is to be a veteran servant, to get guys that healthy distraction through competition and help them out.
So your excuse was that you were retired.
Yeah.
How come you wanted to race? Like, why did you decide to go for that?
I was working for a different nonprofit at the time.
Got you.
Through a network of friends, the opportunity kind of fell in my lap. I grew up in a family of mechanics.
Okay.
A very, blue collar. The whole family gets together. Probably not proper in today's terms, but the women would stay in the house and the men would go out, and we'd open the hoods of everybody's cars and talk about what parts we replaced. So I grew up working on muscle cars.
Got you.
In my first marriage, like I said, this is another problem within special operations, is that divorces are very prevalent because guys dive into their profession. I spent probably the first 5-6 years of my special operations career just diving into deployments, diving into schools, thinking the next credential, the next medal on my chest was going to make me happy. And I sacrificed not just my body, but I sacrificed my family. And there came a point that I'm going through my divorce. My kids are gone. My L4, L5 has been ruptured. So I can't do my job the way that I had previously done it. And in a highly competitive field, when you can't perform at a physical level, especially with the guys that we work around, you're taken down a couple notches. And maybe I wasn't mature enough at the time to understand what I was supposed to be doing, but I needed something. And there's a point I remember I was waking up. I had beer bottles all over the floor. I was running from room to room without an idea of what I'm going to do in the next place. And I finally found working for that nonprofit was something that kind of got me spurred, got me going somewhere. But it was still, burning a candle at both ends without a purpose. What am I getting to? And then that race, it reignited something inside me. There's a passion that I had forgotten that I had. And whether it's wrenching on cars, going fast, or just getting the thrill of doing something crazy, it reignited that passion. And we're sitting at breakfast the next morning. This is a 12-hour race. We're eating pancakes because why not? And he says all that to me, and I was like, how do we bring this to the masses? That's our regiment. Obviously, if it's a problem for the two of us, two healthy young men, what are we missing? What is everybody else missing? Because we look around, and there's There are other nonprofits that do things called adrenaline therapy, where they'll take guys out, they'll take them skydiving, or they'll put them behind the seat of a desert racing vehicle, and that's it, and then they're kind of done, and that's cool. You get them out there. Our purpose, we think, is a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do, instead of just, hey, come out and race this one race, we're trying to get them to invest in the vehicle, invest in the team. We have long-term goals of what we like to do. The initial startup of this is saying, if there is something that you have a passion for or you don't know, we want to remove the monetary means by which prevents you from doing this, because racing is not cheap. So at the end of the day, if we can raise the funds, we have the vehicles, we have the parts, and we have the know-how, what stops you? It's just removing that excuse of no. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody that we've seen out there that has stood up and said, by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. We hear it, we see the hashtags at 22 a day. Yeah. We see people helping, and we need that. Mm-hmm. But we work with a high octane group of people, and those people can't just sit around a campfire, talk about their feelings, and walk back into a 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. They did an outlet, a positive reason to set an alarm clock. And he talks about it, I talk about it. When we have a race coming up, setting that alarm clock isn't like setting it for work. You set it for work, you're like, oh, damn it, can I hit snooze? But when it's race time, you're beating your alarm clock up. You're nope, all right, yeah, cool, good, I'm up. Yeah, let's go. And it's that reason to drive you forward. And I've had a lot of conversations with guys that have contemplated suicide, or even guys that have put a gun in their mouth and pulled the trigger and it hasn't gone off. And one of the things that they relate to me the best is that I didn't have anything to wake up for. And if you don't have anything to wake up for, you're not living.
That's right.
You're alive, but you're not living.
That's right.
The Green Beret racing platform, we have 6 different racing categories right now.
What are they?
We have dirt bike, UTV, we have drag racing, street bike, and then a section we call human powered. So engines involved. So we have marathon runners, we have guys that compete in best ranger, and we have 3-gun shooting. And the reality of it, Adam, is if a guy comes to us and says, man, I'm struggling, and we get to that conversation of, man, what is it that you like to do? And he says, I like to fish. All right, we're going to put you in a fishing tournament. Because it's about the competition, not necessarily, not the event. The event is, as Blue was saying, it can be awe-inspiring to sit in front of 60,000 people when you didn't expect that in a vehicle that you've never piloted before. The Star Spangled Banner is going off. We've got jets flying overhead, and is this realization? And you're like, whoa, this is cool. And it became a driving passion. A year later, here we are starting something completely different. So that's what we're trying to bring to guys that have never experienced that or don't have the means to experience it.
Well, if there was something that you could tell someone that is struggling with that right now. I mean, obviously you have a ton of experience, speaking with people that have been on that edge. What is the message that you would tell them? And how would you kind of, I guess, guide them through their next steps?
I would say the biggest thing is to speak up. The problem we'll have is the guys, they won't say anything. And outside looking in, if you see a guy who's retired, he has his health, he has a nice house, he has a car, he has his family, he has a job he goes to every day, you don't see the detriment that he's causing to himself just in his head every day. And because you don't see it, nobody addresses it. So they have to be the ones who initiate it. So getting guys to sit down and be honest with themselves and say, I need to talk to somebody. I need help. And that may not mean going to a counselor. It may mean calling another one of your brothers, as most of them will do, but taking it beyond that, because a call from 1,000 miles away can only do so much. That's right. Guys can only break away so many times to get to them. Getting guys to invest in themselves through healthy competition, through reaching out and just realizing they have to say something. And it's going to be okay. There is another side to it. You will come through it. I think a lot of them, they can't get out of their own way in that manner. They may want to reach out, but then they don't. And then you go into that dark place and that dark hole, and they overthink it. And then you feel like, well, there is no other option. Pride is a killer. Yeah. Pride and to be a detriment to yourself. So if that was one thing I could tell guys, was like, raise your hand, take a knee, don't be scared to do it. and you'll get through the other side of it. But it has to be recognized first.
How do you think that what percentage of people that are coming out of any sort of either military or special forces do they have similar experiences every single time? Like when after they finish kind of like what they're going through, is that something that is just understood to exist?
I would say I think it's different. For me, I didn't even know I needed it until I needed it. I just felt something, and it was like this sucks. You know, why did I retire? And that's all I could come up with. I didn't go jump on my wife or abuse my children, anything like that. Was drinking a little bit more than I should be, and just spending time trying to jump on my motorcycle and ride from San Antonio to Georgia for the 4th of July. Just a lot of random challenges to myself, but not figuring out why am I doing this? That was a big thing, and that's from my personal experience. I think it all kind of centers around what's next. You know, it's like Talladega Nights. You know, Ricky Bobby. What do I do with my hands when he's standing there? Like, what do I do? The wheels are turning. The blood is still pumping. The fire's still burning.
Yeah.
Now what? And I think that's a big portion of it, guys, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, and I would say the environment to open up. So, you know, we spoke earlier about the campfires and people being able to talk, and that's great. It really is. But the mechanism of trust isn't always there. So the great thing about this is getting together the wrench on a vehicle. You know, you invent some dang cuss words. You do, because engineers don't talk to mechanics. So yeah, you have to find colorful ways to express yourself. But it also provides this environment that, hey, I trust this dude. You know, we're in a roll cage together. We're on a track. We're flying. We're navigating. We're communicating. But there's that unspoken bond. Now, Blue and I've been to Africa together. We spent a good amount of time on a detachment together.
Gotcha.
So we already had that, but.
Right. Good.
Down with guys, there's a natural standoffishness because you don't want to appear weak. So this is a good example of this. In 2005, 2006, I was in the infantry. I was a part of the 172nd Stryker Brigade. We spent 16 straight months in Iraq. That was a heck of a long time for a 20-year-old to do this. But the end of October, I had a friend of mine was killed. He used to work out together, dive. He'd made the Olympic team to actually dive. Dude made me look like a fool in front of some of the girls at the pool because I didn't know this and he didn't explain it. But he even let me go first. But I happened to have a day off that day. We rotate through. One guy from the squad would be off per day. We had 9 guys, so every 9th day was my day off. I just happened to be off the day that happened. And that, it sent shockwaves through the company, of course, when the guy gets killed. So his funeral was 4 days later, the memorial service that we'd hold over there. Big green machine don't stop though, so my platoon had to go out. One of my friends said, "Hey man, you take my spot so you can go to the funeral. You can be a part of it, the memorial service, and I'll just take your day off." Solid trade. We've been doing this for dang near a year and a half now. So I'm at his memorial service. When I come back, I found out that Doug had invoked a rule that said, "Hey, he stands in that hatch," because I think I'm average size, but I guess 6'4", 240 is not average size in America.
Okay.
And military vehicles don't fit me very well. So I would stand out the back of the air guard hatch in the Stryker just because I didn't fit. So he's not a big guy. He invoked the rule that said, I'm taking his spot because I'm here in his place. He was killed by a sniper that day. And that's a terrible day, but I compartmentalized it hard. I spent probably 2 or 3 days in my head, mourning with everybody else, and then I moved on. So I thought, and 10 years later, when I'm going through a divorce, I'm talking to a counselor about it, and I'm in tears crying about something that happened 10 years ago. Didn't even know that it bothered me. And it set me down this different course. And, like he was saying, like I didn't know I needed something. That was a great growth experience for me, but it took a decade that I shoved it down. So when you look at what these dudes are doing when they get out, they find something to dive in, but it doesn't mean they're facing what they're doing, facing the things that are actually going. And our casualty rates are through the roof. Since 2012, there have been more Green Berets killed in combat than the rest of the military combined. We make up more than 50%.
Why is that the case?
We get sent to a lot of places.
High tempo.
It costs bang for the buck. You know, you send 12 guys that can work with an indigenous force. They speak a foreign language. You know, they're all of higher rated intelligence of however the military says that, you know, however they rate it. And you put them there, and it's a force multiplier. So instead of sending, you know, 3 companies of infantry to an area, I can send 1 special operations detachment and get the same bang for the buck. So it puts us in austere environments. It puts us in places that don't have as much large support. You know, I've been in firefights where you have, you know, 5 jets overhead and they're dropping bombs and doing strikes, and it's still heavy fire. Now you take them and you push them further out and take away the air cover, and I don't care how bad of a dude you are, you got 60 dudes on the other side firing. They're going to find one of you. So we see it, you know, right now we're in a weird pause just based on peace treaties and negotiations. But for the past couple of years, we were seeing 3-4 dudes every 6 months, you know, getting killed. And we all know them. You know, there's walls and there's more dedicated to them. But because of that tempo and because there's not a lot of us, it just turns around. Next mission. Next mission. You come back, you have the memorial service, and then it's okay. Get to schools, get trained up, get recertified. We have to deploy. And our op tempo at one point was, you know, you get half a day off for every day you're deployed. And anybody that's done any kind of job in the military knows that a day off doesn't mean that, or a day home doesn't mean that you're home.
Yeah.
You have certifications and credentials. And
What does it mean?
it means you have a day in the States, not necessarily
Because
home.
there are other things that'll come up that you have to address. Schools, training. Just because you're not deployed and you get to come back, it doesn't mean you're off by any means. The Army tries their best. As I was retiring, they were coming up with different programs and trying to make sure guys are getting as much time. But you can only do so much. You know, wars don't stop. The Army machine doesn't stop. So they're trying. You know, guys, they've actually pulled guys back when they looking like this guy's has too many days out. Get him back here. But that is a slow trend. Like I said, they're trying to figure it out. You know, and that's another. I want to say that too. What we're seeing is not due to the lack of the Army not trying. It's just it is a different avenue. The same way we are separated to be selected for special forces. It is a different process to try to help these guys. It just is. I have a friend who's a counselor, and they're like, well, why don't they do this and why don't they do that? I said, because they're not going to do it. You know, I spoke to a counselor one time in 22 years. It was available for me one time, and that was mandatory. It's just not something that guys are, they're not just going to push that way initially, you know.
And it's a check the block. You know, we know all of the questionnaires that are supposed to screen things out. It's just, you know, how many hours of sleep are you getting? Well, you know,
How
on
much
average
you drinking
per night,
already?
you know, how much drinking? You know, do you do this? Do you do that? And we know all the answers we're supposed to put. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's true. And now that seems weird. Like, why wouldn't a guy seek trouble? You know, when I had that blown disc in my back, my L4, L5, I had gotten back from a trip to Africa. I don't remember the month, but within a month I was getting back surgery, and 6 weeks after that I was in Baghdad. And it wasn't, nobody sat me down and said, hey man, what are you doing? It was just an understood thought that my team is heading to a hostile area, and I'll be damned if somebody takes the spot of me that I don't know, that I don't trust, that they don't trust. I'm not putting their lives in somebody else's hands. Now, you look at that from a logical standpoint and say you're not able to compete physically, and, you know, you're more of a detriment. Yeah, but you're not hearing that at that time. You know, it's
No,
about
not at all.
let's go. So you got guys that come back, they see horrific things. You know, they're getting blown up themselves. You know, they're getting shot. They're watching their buddies get killed or maimed or whatnot. And the questions that get asked to us, we know, red flag goes off. It's like, well, if I answer this correctly, I'm getting taken off my detachment. Everything I worked for, you know, is gone. I don't know if I'm going to come back. So I wouldn't even say it's a sign of weakness. It's almost a sign of distrust in an organization that's trying to help you, because you can't let somebody else take your place. You know, it's, you know, I mean, think about it. Would you buy a car from somebody without driving it? Like, no, you don't trust that guy. Now imagine if your buddy's life that you trust with your family, he knows your kids. Blue knows my kids. To think of somebody that I don't know stepping up, having his back, that I have no clue who he is, regardless of what tabs are on his shoulder, what color his hat is. I don't know that guy. I don't trust that. This man's awesome. I'm gonna put myself out there for him. And that's what you see across the regiment, is that these guys are, stuffing these problems down continuously. And there is no way to step up and say, hey, you can still go do your job if you just answer these properly. Nobody's going to trust that, because it's just how it is.
Yeah.
So what is this? Is the issue from the front end, or because there's a certain extent that's okay? Well, if I go through, you mentioned answer these questions correctly, right? So should we be taking better care of? Because right now we're solving the problem in the back end, right? After these people get out, there's something for them to go through. But is there anything that can be done on the front end?
That's a lot of this.
Yeah, trying to, but a lot of times, and I know people say it all the time, you don't know what you don't know. Trying to identify, because people don't know how they're going to react to certain things. I went through what I thought was just fine. I retired with all my limbs. I'm healthy, and for the most part, everything should be fine. But it wasn't. So how do you identify that? Prior to that, you really can't. It's just that the guys having enough courage to say, and speak to themselves and their friends, to say, okay, I got to get something done. Something is not right. I don't feel right, and identifying it and stepping forward with it. I think that is the I wouldn't say the easy button for it, but that has to be the most immediate thing, I think, because you can ask all the questions you want. And guys can answer, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to look at the question and say, what would Jesus say? And they're going to answer every time. Every time. And I was in that same position. I don't blame them. That's what they're going to do. Is it the right way? Hey. But that's what you're going to get. So once making people understand that they can trust the system, there is a way, there is help, but you have to be, I guess, so to speak, your own first responder on mental health, and saying that, okay, something's up, and I have to address it. But it would be cool if there was a way that we could be like, look, you're teetering, bro. And sometimes you can see it.
Yeah.
But guys hide it very well. They hide it very, very, very well.
That's right.
It's hard to be that person to say, you need to go sit down somewhere, because you don't want to take that away from somebody.
Yep.
You don't want to be that guy, that team sergeant, that leader that says, okay, I know he had a rough couple of weekends. Do I really want to pull him and potentially make a situation even worse, because you just don't fully know? It's so many variables in there. And hopefully down the road, there are ways to be able to format this, to see it through. But with GBR, once it's identified, as soon as it's identified, that's what we're going at. So as soon as that flag goes up, there's an outlet. Whether it's phone call, golf, whatever it is. Just get that person to think, okay, I know that I can call these guys, and they're going to take care of me, and whatever that means, for them. So
I knew we were onto something when I was on a phone call. A friend of mine called me up. We had a suicide in the unit, and a guy that was really close to the guy that committed suicide was having a rough time. And that's code, for us to say, hey man, this he's in a rough spot. For somebody to another person to make that call, that guy's looking at polishing bullets, to take his life, because whatever has clicked is not right. So I get on a phone call with him. I happen to know the guy, and we're talking just normal BS that we do. And I didn't want to bring up that I knew he was going through a hard time, because you could get a guy, especially on a phone, to just stonewall and just shut off. Because he's like, no man, I'm not talking about this. So instead we started talking about racing. I'm talking about the Mint 400 coming up, and he's like, man, that sounds cool. I was like, hey man, do you want to race? And he's like, no, I'm not really into racing. You know, I was like, oh yeah, no worries, we do other things. And he's like, I'm into tinkering. And I was like working on vehicles. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, dude, I need mechanics. I need people in the pits to do stuff. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah, like we're right around trophy trucks. And right there, I heard a flip. He was like, trophy trucks, 1,000 horsepower, methanol injected vehicles that are amazing feats of engineering. And he perked up and he's like, when is this event? I was like, oh, it's, weekend of March 7th, March 6th. I can get you in the pits with the trophy trucks. We're right next to him. And he's like, I'm going to clear my schedule right now. And there was a complete shift in how he talked. It went from, yeah, man, works, work, family, doing this, working on this project to, wait a minute, that's cool. I want to be there. And that's a future plan. And you talk to any psychologist that talks about suicide, and a future plan is the goal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a guy saying, okay, in the future, we're going to do this. I did a suicide intervention with a friend of mine, and we made him in charge of, or we put him in charge of all the planning, because we were coming to where he was. He had like a 3-day heads up. And we're like, hey man, we're looking at doing this. We're looking at doing that. So we forced him in that small interim to make plans. And now he's sitting in that team setting again, where he can't let his friends down. Mm-hmm. The same reason, I deployed with a broken back. Mm-hmm. Same thing there. Hey, I can't let my friends travel down here without things being set up. Mm-hmm. The next thing you know, we're doing fantastic things. I've talked to that guy so many times since then. And you had a couple really heartfelt phone calls with me of, there are tears being shed. There are things that are being said that you wouldn't get out of him if you just walked up and said, hey man, I hear you're thinking about taking your own life. Mm-hmm. You're going to get cussed out. Dude's going to hang up on you. He's going to walk away. He's going to shut down. So that's the wrench turning portion of this, where you get guys into a place where they have a set goal. Mm-hmm. They want to do this. And whether that is sitting at a dry box with, the golf, driving balls out there and having a good time and talking and working on stuff, and then things come up, or we're driving, 80 miles an hour through the desert, and you just get that bond going. And that's really what we're after.
Yeah, that's great. So from the general public, what is the best way to, help your organization? What can the USA do for you guys?
Uncle Sam, we need a check.
Yeah. What do you guys need?
Money. Mm-hmm. And that's, racing is not cheap, and we heard this the other day. Somebody's like, well, why are you trying to do things with UTVs and drag cars? Why don't you just go dirt bikes? It's cheaper. Yeah. It 100% is. And if we were trying to be budgetarily conscious, we would throw people in and say, go race, run. Mm-hmm. That doesn't cost us any money. But at the end of the day, the broad spectrum of this thing is dedicated towards whatever that person needs, not what we're good at. I'm a mediocre dirt bike racer. Mm-hmm. I am by no means should have any decals on my bike for how I race. By no means, nobody's, but that is terrible advertising. But at the end of the day, if somebody comes to us and they're like, man, this is a passion, or this is what I want to learn to do, because trying those new things, that's just another thing that we compete in. Who are we to tell them no? And that's we have this slogan that says, stop accepting no from people who haven't tried. And we haven't seen anybody step up in this way and say, hey, whatever it is that the person in trouble needs, not what we're good at. Because I'm an all right golfer. I'll pay for somebody to go golf in this, the second it comes up, because that's what's needed. So really, Adam, that comes down to money. We had a fantastic fundraiser this weekend. We have another one, coming up in 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, to have an outlet, a place where guys can go, a team room, if you will, that is not in their team room, where they can be comfortable. They're not bothered by the outside world. It's a reprieve from their burdens. That's what we're trying to build. And I mean, that takes money.
That's right.
They can do it through the website. We have a donate button there. We'll give you the information. You can throw on the podcast for the PayPal and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That people can donate.
Absolutely. And then for is Green Beret Racing, is that only for Green Berets, or is that for other branches of the military?
So it's currently, we're 2 months old.
Yeah.
It's for members of the regiment.
Okay.
So we lean heavily towards Green Berets. However, if we have the means to help out, a Marine Raider, or an Army Ranger, a Navy SEAL, then I mean that's the goal here. The goal isn't that Green Berets matter more. That's just an area that we know. We can walk in with the badges and the tabs, and we can look at somebody and be like, "No, you're messing up," and I know that because I've been there. So that's the goal with that.
For instance, for last year for the men, we had no support system. There happened to be more Green Berets actually in the area training and a maintenance support team that happened to be out there for them. They helped us out. Just like that. They were our backside support in a matter of minutes with a conversation. That was it. That team, that unity just formed up just right. That wasn't planned before. It was like, hey, we're in the area. Cool. Can you spare this and that? Oh yeah, we give you like 7 guys to go help you. It's only one day. Just like that. So it spawns from us, Green Berets, but eventually we're gonna push out. The thing is to help guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're not gonna tell anybody no when they come up and they're telling you I need help. That's not gonna happen. It's just that that's what we start from. That's what we know. Because when we started last year, it was us racing against MARSOC, Navy SEAL team, PJs, other special operation guys, and people will tell you we rib each other, but when it comes down to something like this, we're all on the same team. Especially when we dealing with mental health, trying to get guys connected, give them that environment and that culture, so to speak, of being back on a team and being around like-minded individuals. We're always going to work together with other organizations.
Absolutely. Well, it was great kind of like talking to you so much about, the Green Beret racing. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing for your guys' organization. I think it's something that is definitely needed. I personally did not realize until yesterday that was something that even existed. I didn't know that problem. You hear it. It's always like kind of like in the background.
It's a hashtag.
Yeah, something like that, right? It's like, oh, it's there. But for it to be kind of like brought to the surface, I think is a huge thing that of what you guys are doing. Is there anything that you guys would like to tell the world? I mean, this is kind of like your opportunity to get that message out there. What would you like to say?
Invisible wounds take more of our brothers than the ones that you can see.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine, one of my really good friends. He's an amputee, and his right leg above the knee. He's one of the most driven men I've ever met in my life. He's a fantastic human. And he's a big proponent of it as well, that the things that you can't see, I mean, they're hidden, So we have this really easy time looking at service members that have, maiming scars, they have missing an eye, or they've been burned, or they're missing a leg or something like that. That's visible, it's tangible, it's easy to see. And I think suicide is ramping up because we can't see it. We're not looking for those signs. We all stare at the guy walking through the airport without a leg. And we see it, it's there. But for every one of him, there's 10 people walking through that airport that are contemplating things in their life. So the message I would say is not just reach out, but hold somebody accountable. It's a tough thing to do. It's uncomfortable for the person that's holding them accountable because you feel like you're infringing. But there's nothing worse than sitting down with yourself after that person's killed themselves, asking, "What could I have done?" That there's no worse feeling, and it's a cascading, spiraling. It just takes you down. So, what's wrong with calling somebody and being like, "Hey, you were off today," and not accepting no? Like, no, I'm fine. No, you weren't. I know you. You're off. Talk to me. Let's grab a beer. Let's go shoot a gun. Let's go drive. Let's go do something fun. And really become invasive, if you will, to a point, and really asking those tough questions. Don't accept, yeah, man, I'm fine.
And it has to be habitual. So one thing I found that works, a morning text. Hey, bro, you alive? As fun as that may sound, yeah, jackass, I'm alive. I'm checking every day. I love you. Have a good one. Just those little things, and it's weird as it sounds. We talk to each other like that. It's just weird. That's love, we call it like we see it. But like you said, being accountable, holding them to it, because that feeling, that knowing that you didn't do anything when you could have, or you didn't do enough, that's a feeling that's going to hurt worse more than anything. And Nick brought up a good point. A lot of times when you see those guys coming in, or girls, they're walking through the airport and everybody's waving, at least probably half of that formation is thinking about what bills they behind on. Is my wife and my family even at the house? Those, guys are getting off the plane for us, and not to get too deep into this, there is no ticker tape parade. You get off the plane, you go home. You hug mama, you kiss the babies, you go to work the next day, you knock out some paperwork, and if you're lucky, you will get that leave because you're owed that. But more than likely, there's a school, something else is coming up. So it never completely winds down. And and it's always turning, it's always rolling. So making sure guys, they know that, hey, at some point we can turn it off. There is somewhere to go. That I owe it to myself, my family, my brothers, to make that happen. I think the more we talk about it, the more we do it, it won't be so frowned upon to admit that. Mental health is stepped up a lot, like in the last 5 years. I would say, just from me getting the time I got out to now, but getting it into the regiment to where guys, that trust issue, knowing that I can raise the flag and say, hey, something's going on, and being in a safe environment, that's going to be big. So making sure they're not afraid to do it.
That's right.
GreenBeretRacing.org.
Absolutely. Well, Nick and Blue, thank you guys so much for joining me on the show. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you for everything that you do for the world and the USA. All right.
Thanks, man.
All right. Cool.
Thank you.